The afternoon sun blazed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Cross Industries' executive boardroom when Damien Cross felt his phone vibrate against his chest. He was in the middle of closing a multi-billion-dollar acquisition deal with Japanese investors, but something about the urgency of the vibration made him glance down. The caller ID made his blood run cold. Westfield Academy, Sophie's school. "Excuse me for one moment," Damien said to the room full of suited executives, his voice maintaining its usual commanding tone, despite the growing knot in his stomach. He stepped into the hallway and answered immediately. "Mr. Cross, this is Principal Martinez from Westfield Academy." Sophie collapsed during recess. "The paramedics are here and they're taking her to Houston Children's Medical Center right now. You need to come immediately." The phone slipped slightly in Damien's suddenly sweaty palm. Sophie, his 6-year-old daughter, was the center of his universe. Ever since her mother had died in that car accident 3 years ago, Sophie was all he had left that mattered. The business deals, the billions in the bank, the luxury penthouses, none of it meant anything compared to his little girl. "Is she conscious? What happened?" Damien was already moving toward the elevator, his long strides eating up the marble corridor. She was playing on the monkey bars and suddenly grabbed her chest, saying it hurt. Then she fainted. "Mr. Cross, the paramedics mentioned something about her heart. They said she needs immediate medical attention." Damien's world tilted. Sophie had always been such a healthy, energetic child. She rode horses, played soccer, swam in their pool for hours. How could there be something wrong with her heart? Race against time 20 minutes later, Damien's black Lamborghini screeched into the hospital parking lot. He had broken every speed limit getting there, his mind racing faster than the car's engine. Through his earpiece, his assistant Rebecca had been coordinating with the hospital, ensuring that Sophie would get the absolute best care money could buy. The automatic doors of Houston Children's Medical Center whooshed open as Damien strode through, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. Despite the chaos in his mind, he still cut an imposing figure, 6 feet 3 inches of controlled power in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair slightly disheveled. From running his hands through it during the drive, Sophie Cross, he said tersely to the receptionist, "I'm her father." "Room 314, pediatric ICU," the woman replied, her voice gentle with practiced sympathy. "Dr. Hayes is waiting to speak with you." Damien took the elevator up, each floor seeming to take an eternity. When the doors finally opened, he saw a tall, gray-haired man in a white coat approaching him with a serious expression. "Mr. Cross, I'm Dr. Benjamin Hayes, Chief of Pediatric Cardiology. Your daughter is stable for now, but I need to be direct with you about her condition." They walked quickly down the hallway as Dr. Hayes explained. "Sophie has a complex congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot. It's something she was born with, but sometimes these conditions don't manifest symptoms until later in childhood. The good news is that it's treatable with surgery. The challenging news is that this particular case is quite complex." Damien felt like he was drowning. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we need the best pediatric cardiac surgeon available. Fortunately, we have someone here who specializes in exactly this type of complex repair. Dr. Alina Rodriguez just finished her fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital and has joined our team. She's performed this exact surgery dozens of times with a perfect success rate." The name hit Damien like a physical blow. Alina Rodriguez couldn't be the same. Alina, 7 years had passed since he had thrown her out of his life in the cruelest way possible. 7 years since he had believed his mother's lies and the doctored photographs that seemed to show Alina with another man. 7 years since he had refused to listen to her desperate attempts to explain, to tell him something important. The impossible reunion. Dr. Hayes led him to Sophie's room, where his little girl lay connected to various monitors, looking so small and fragile in the hospital bed. Her long brown hair was spread across the pillow, and her usually bright green eyes were closed in sleep. Damien's heart clenched as he approached her bedside and gently took her tiny hand in his. "Daddy?" Sophie's eyes fluttered open, and she managed a weak smile. "I'm scared. My chest really hurts." "I know, sweetheart, but you're going to be okay. There's a very special doctor here who's going to help you feel better." Damien kissed her forehead, breathing in her familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. "Mr. Cross?" A voice from the doorway made Damien freeze. That voice, soft, melodic, with just a hint of a Spanish accent, was one he had never forgotten despite trying to erase it from his memory for 7 years. He turned slowly, and there she was. Elena Rodriguez stood in the doorway wearing surgical scrubs, her long black hair pulled back in a professional bun. No. Those same warm brown eyes that had once looked at him with such love, now carefully neutral and professional. She was even more beautiful than he remembered, with a new confidence and poise that spoke of years of hard-won success. Time seemed to stop as their eyes met. Damien saw a flicker of recognition and pain flash across her features. Before she composed herself with obvious effort, "Dr. Rodriguez," Dr. Hayes said, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "This is Sophie's father, Damien Cross." Elena stepped into the room, her movements graceful and controlled. "Mr. Cross," she said formally, extending her hand for a professional handshake. When their skin touched, even briefly, Damien felt the same electric current that had always existed between them. "Doctor," he managed to reply, his voice rougher than usual. Elena immediately focused on Sophie, her entire demeanor softening as she approached the bed. "Hello, Sophie. I'm Dr. Rodriguez. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Sophie looked up at Elena with curious eyes. "You're very pretty." "Ah! Are you going to fix my heart?" Elena smiled, and Damien felt his chest tighten at the sight. That smile had once been reserved for him alone. "I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel much better. Would you like to hear about what we're going to do?" As Elena explained the surgery to Sophie in simple, reassuring terms, Damien found himself studying her intently. She had always been beautiful, but now there was something more, a strength, a certainty, professional competence that was incredibly attractive. Her hands, as she gently examined Sophie, were steady and sure. These were the hands of a surgeon who had dedicated her life to saving children. "Hidden emotions, the surgery will take about 4 hours," Elena explained to both Sophie and Damien. "Sophie will be asleep the whole time, and when she wakes up, her heart will be working much better." "Will it hurt?" Sophie asked with the direct honesty of a child. "Might be a little sore afterward, but we have excellent pain medicine. And I promise you'll feel so much better once you're healed. You'll be able to run and play without getting tired." Elena's interaction with Sophie was natural and warm, and Damien noticed how his daughter immediately seemed to trust her. There was something almost familiar in the way Elena looked at Sophie, a tenderness that went beyond professional care. "When do we schedule the surgery?" Damien asked, his business instincts kicking in despite his emotional turmoil. "Tomorrow." "Morning at 7 a.m., Elena replied, finally looking directly at him again. "Sophie needs to be NPO, nothing by mouth, after midnight tonight?" "The surgery is complex, but I want to assure you that I've performed this exact procedure many times, with excellent outcomes." Her professional confidence was absolute. Despite everything that had happened between them, Damien found himself believing in her completely. This was not the uncertain young woman he had known 7 years ago. This Elena had clearly fought her way to the top of one of the most demanding medical specialties in the world. "I'll need to speak with you privately about the risks and benefits of the procedure," Elena continued. "Hospital policy requires informed consent from the parent or guardian." The word guardian seemed to hang in the air between them. Elena had no way of knowing that Sophie's mother was dead, that Damien had been raising her alone with the help of nannies and his overbearing mother. "Of course," Damien replied. "Sophie, sweetheart, I'm going to talk to Dr. Rodriguez about your surgery. I'll be right back. Okay?" "Right." Sophie nodded sleepily. The medications they had given her were clearly making her drowsy. The professional mask Elena led him to a small consultation room down the hall. The moment the door closed behind them, the professional mask slipped slightly from Elena's face. "I had no idea," she said quietly, not quite meeting his eyes. "When Dr. Hayes told me the patient's name was Sophie Cross, I never imagined that her father would be me," Damien finished. He moved closer, studying her face. "Elena, we need to talk about what happened 7 years ago." "No, we don't," Elena said firmly, the professional mask sliding back into place. "What happened between us is irrelevant. The only thing that matters now is Sophie's health and her surgery." But Damien could see the pain in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she opened Sophie's medical file. Whatever had driven them apart 7 years ago, it had hurt her deeply, and time hadn't fully healed those wounds. "She's beautiful," Elena said softly, looking at Sophie's photograph in the file. "She looks just like her mother," Damien finished, though something in Elena's expression suggested she had been about to say something else entirely. Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying the photograph with an intensity that seemed odd for a doctor simply reviewing a patient's case. When she looked up, her eyes were suspiciously bright. "The surgery has a 95% success rate when performed properly," she said, returning. "Two professional topics. The risks include the standard surgical risks, bleeding, infection, reaction to anesthesia. But this is what I do, Damien. This is what I've devoted my life to. I won't let anything happen to her." The way she said it, with such fierce protectiveness, made Damien wonder if there was more to Elena's investment in Sophie's case than professional duty. But before he could analyze that thought further, Elena was standing, preparing to leave. "Need to review her films and plan the surgical approach. You should spend time with Sophie tonight. Talk to her, read to her, help her feel safe and loved before the surgery." As she reached for the door handle, Damien couldn't stop himself from saying, "Elena, wait." She paused, but didn't turn around. "Thank you," he said simply, "for taking her case, for being here. I know this can't be easy for you either." Elena's shoulders tensed, and for a moment Damien thought she might say something about their past. Instead, she simply nodded once and left the room, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume and 1,000 unanswered questions. As Damien stood alone in the consultation room, one thought echoed in his mind. Tomorrow, Elena would hold his daughter's heart in her hands. The woman he had loved and lost would literally have the power to save or destroy everything that mattered to him now. And despite 7 years of trying to forget her, he realized that seeing Elena again had awakened feelings he thought he had. Buried forever, the past was about to collide with the present in the most dramatic way possible. And Damien had no idea if any of them would survive the impact intact. The night before Sophie's surgery, Damien couldn't sleep. He paced the hospital corridors while his daughter rested, his mind churning with memories he had tried to bury for 7 years. Elena's face haunted him, not just as she appeared now, confident and professional, but as she had been during their last encounter, desperate, tearful, trying to tell him something important that he had refused to hear. At 2 a.m., he found himself in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cup of coffee that had long grown cold. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice Elena enter until she sat down across from him at the small table. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked quietly. She had changed from her scrubs into jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loosed around her shoulders. Without the professional armor of her medical coat, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "I keep thinking about what happened between us," Damien admitted. "Lena, before Sophie's surgery tomorrow, I need to know the truth. Were you trying to tell me that night 7 years ago?" Elena's hands wrapped around her own coffee cup, as if seeking warmth. For a long moment, she was silent, her brown eyes reflecting years of pain and secrets. "I was trying to tell you that I was pregnant," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "with your child." The words hit Damien like a physical blow. "What? The night you threw me out? When you showed me those photographs of me supposedly with another man? I had just come from the doctor's office, I was 12 weeks pregnant, and terrified to tell you because things had been so intense between us so fast." Elena's voice grew stronger, years of suppressed emotion flowing out. "But I was also excited because I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something real together." Damien's mind reeled. "But those photographs. I saw you with Marcus. At that restaurant, you were laughing, touching his hand. Marcus was my study partner from medical school, nothing more. We were celebrating because I had just gotten into the pediatric surgery program at Boston Children's Hospital." Elena's eyes flashed with old anger. "Those photos were taken completely out of context, but someone wanted you to see them that way, someone?" Damien's voice was dangerous now. "Your mother, though I couldn't prove it at the time. Margaret Cross never thought I was good enough for her precious son. A medical student from a working-class family, first generation. American, I wasn't part of your social circle." Elena met his gaze steadily. "But I loved you, Damien. I loved you so much that when you threw me out, when you called me a liar and a gold digger, it nearly destroyed me. The adoption conspiracy, Damien felt sick. The baby, what happened to the baby? Lena's composure finally cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. I had no money, no support, no family who could help. You had made it clear you never wanted to see me again. Your security team made sure I couldn't get anywhere near you to explain, so I made the hardest decision of my life. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo, a professional headshot of Sophie from her school directory that she had somehow obtained. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl and placed her for adoption through Riverside Adoption Services. They promised me she would go to a loving family who could give her everything I couldn't. Damien stared at the photo, his mind making connections that seemed impossible. Sophie, I chose a closed adoption. I never knew who adopted her. But the moment I saw her today, the moment I looked into those green eyes that are exactly like yours, I knew. Alina wiped her tears with the back of her hand. The adoption agency told me they had placed her with a wealthy family in Houston. They never mentioned it was you. That's impossible, Damien said. But even as he spoke, memories were clicking into place. Sophie came to me through my mother's connections. Margaret said she knew about a baby who needed a home, that the birth mother was young and couldn't care for her. She handled all the paperwork, all the arrangements. Lena's laugh was bitter. Your mother orchestrated the whole thing. She destroyed our relationship, made sure I gave up our daughter, and then arranged for you to adopt her without ever knowing she was yours biologically. She got exactly what she wanted, me out of your life, and Sophie raised as a cross, with no connection to her real mother. Damien stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need to see those adoption papers. I need proof. I have copies in my hotel room, Elena said. But Damien, what matters now is Sophie. She needs surgery in 5 hours, and she'll needs both of us to be strong for her. You're her mother, Damien said wonderfully, the full weight of it hitting him. Sophie is our daughter. Biologically, yes. But she's been your daughter for 6 years. She doesn't know me, doesn't need the confusion of learning the truth right before major surgery. Alina stood as well, professional composure returning. Tomorrow I save her life. Everything else can wait. Pre-surgery moments at 5 a.m. Damien sat beside Sophie's bed, watching her sleep. The preoperative medications were already coursing through her system, keeping her calm and drowsy. He had spent the remaining hours of the night in Elena's hotel room, poring over adoption documents and birth certificates that confirmed everything she had told him. Margaret Cross had indeed orchestrated everything with methodical precision. She had paid private investigators to follow Alina and take compromising photos. She had connections at the adoption agency who ensured the baby would be placed with her son. She had even arranged for Elena's attempts to contact Damien to be intercepted and blocked. Daddy, Sophie's sleepy voice interrupted his dark thoughts. Is the pretty doctor going to fix my heart today? Yes, sweetheart. Dr. Rodriguez is going to take very good care of you. I dreamed about her, Sophie said with the innocent honesty of childhood. She was holding me when I was little, singing to me in Spanish. It was a nice dream. Damien's throat tightened. Even in sleep, some deep part of Sophie recognized her biological mother. Alina appeared in the doorway, now dressed in surgical scrubs with her hair covered by a surgical cap. She looked calm and focused, every inch the professional surgeon, but Damien could see the emotion she was carefully controlling. Good morning, Sophie, Alina said warmly. You ready to get that heart of yours working perfectly? Sophie nodded, then surprised everyone by reaching out her small hand to Alina. Will you hold my hand until I fall asleep? Elena's composure wavered for just a moment. Of course, sweetheart. As the surgical team prepared to take Sophie to the operating room, Elena bent down and whispered something in Spanish in Sophie's ear. The little girl smiled and nodded. What did you tell her? Damien asked. I told her that she's braver than she knows, and that I'll be with her every step of the way, Elena replied. That her mama loves her more than all the stars in the sky. For hours and 37 minutes, Damien paced the surgical waiting room, checking his watch every few minutes. Rebecca, his assistant, arrived with changes of clothes and updates on business matters he couldn't bring himself to care about. Dr. Hayes checked in twice with generic updates. Surgery is proceeding well, and Dr. Rodriguez is making excellent progress. At hour 3, Damien's phone rang. Margaret Cross's name appeared on the screen. He answered with barely controlled fury. Damien, darling, I heard about Sophie's emergency. I'm flying back from the Hamptons immediately. Don't bother, Damien said coldly. We need to talk, Mother. But not here. Not now. What's wrong? You sound upset. Is Sophie all right? Sophie is in surgery with Dr. Alina Rodriguez. Remember that name, Mother? Remember the woman whose life you destroyed 7 years ago? The silence on the other end of the line was telling. I don't know what you're talking about, Margaret finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. The adoption papers, Mother. Private investigator reports. The intercepted letters and blocked phone calls. I found everything. Damien's voice was ice cold. I know what you did. I know that Sophie is Elena's biological daughter. I know you manipulated both of us to get what you wanted. Everything I did was to protect you. Margaret's mask finally slipped. That woman was using you, just like all the others. She would have trapped you with that baby and taken half of everything you've worked for. Instead, you stole my daughters. Mother from her and cost me 7 years with the woman I loved. Damien ended the call without another word. Surgical success at 12:47 p.m. Alina emerged from the surgical suite, still in her scrubs, but with the surgical mask pulled down around her neck.
Oh.
Her face was tired, but triumphant.
Oh.
The surgery was a complete success, she announced to Damien, who had jumped to his feet the moment he saw her. Sophie's heart is now functioning normally. The repair was textbook perfect, and she should have no limitations on her activity once she's fully healed. Damien felt his knees go weak with relief. Can I see her? She's in recovery now. It will be another hour before she's awake enough for visitors, but yes, she's going to be absolutely fine. Lena's professional smile softened into something more personal. She's strong, Damien. Stronger than either of us probably realized. Like her mother, Damien said quietly. Alina looked away, suddenly vulnerable again. She's been your daughter for 6 years. It doesn't change just because we know the biology now. But it changes everything else. Damien stepped closer. Alina, I need you to know that if I had known the truth 7 years ago, if I had known you were pregnant, everything would have been different. I would have chosen you. I would have chosen our family. But you didn't trust me enough to listen, Alina pointed out, though her voice held more sadness than accusation. When it mattered most, you believed the worst of me. Because I was manipulated. By someone I trusted more than anyone. Damien's voice was rough with emotion. My mother played on every insecurity I had about women wanting me for my money. But Alina, even without knowing about Sophie, I never stopped loving you. Not completely, Alina's eyes filled with tears. I can't do this now, Damien. I just spent 4 hours operating on our daughter, trying not to think about anything except saving her life. I can't process 7 years of pain and regret while she's still recovering. Then don't, Damien said gently. Just let me be here. For you, for her, for us, whatever that means now. For a moment, Alina looked like she might break down entirely. Then she straightened, found her professional composure again, and nodded. Sophie will need to stay in the hospital for at least a week. After that, she'll need careful monitoring and follow-up care. Alina met his eyes. I'd like to remain her primary cardiologist if you're comfortable with that. I can't think of anyone I'd trust more with her care. Damien replied sincerely as they walked toward the recovery room together to wait for Sophie to wake up. Damien felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. Hope. The truth was finally out. The lies had been exposed, and his daughter was going to be healthy. Everything else they would figure out together, one day at a time. The past had been built on deception and manipulation, but the future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities. And at the center of it all was Sophie, their miracle daughter, who had brought them back together in the most unexpected way imaginable. Sophie's eyes fluttered open at 3:15 p.m., still hazy from anesthesia, but alert enough to focus on the two faces leaning over her hospital bed. Damien was on her right side, holding her small hand gently, while Alina stood on the left, monitoring her vital signs with professional concern that couldn't quite hide her personal investment. Daddy. Sophie's voice was barely a whisper, rough, from the breathing tube that had been removed an hour earlier. I'm right here, sweetheart. How do you feel? Sophie considered this seriously, as only a 6-year-old could. Different. Like my chest isn't squeezing anymore. She turned her head slowly toward Alina. Dr. Rodriguez, did you really fix my heart? Elena's smile was radiant. I did, Sophie. Your heart is working perfectly now. You're going to feel so much better as you heal. Thank you for making me better, Sophie said with simple sincerity. Then, with the startling intuition that children sometimes possess, she added, You look like you've been crying. Are you sad? Elena glanced at Damien, then back at Sophie. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're very happy too, like when Daddy cries during movies about princesses, Sophie asked, causing Damien to chuckle despite the emotional intensity of the moment. Exactly like that, Elena confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Over the next several hours, as Sophie slept off the effects of anesthesia, Damien and Elena took turns staying by her bedside. During Elena's shift, she found herself studying Sophie's face, cataloging every feature, every expression. The little girl had Damien's strong jaw and determined chin. But her eyes were Elena's, not just the color, but the shape, the way they crinkled slightly at the corners when she smiled, confronting the past in Sophie's third day in the hospital. Margaret Cross arrived unannounced. Elena was adjusting Sophie's fore when the older woman swept into the room like a force of nature. Her silver hair perfectly styled, her designer suit impeccable despite the urgency of her travel. Sophie, darling. Margaret rushed to the bedside, pushing past Elena as if she were invisible. Grandmother is here now. Everything will be all right. Sophie, who had been coloring in a book Elena had brought her, looked up with confusion. Grandma Margaret, why are you being mean to Dr. Rodriguez? She saved my life. I'm not being mean, darling. I'm simply concerned about the quality of care you're receiving. Margaret's smile was shark-like as she finally acknowledged Elena's presence. Dr. Rodriguez, isn't it? I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Actually, we have, Elena said calmly, setting down the forebag with steady hands. 7 years ago at Damien's penthouse. You told me I wasn't worthy of your son, and that I should disappear from his life before I embarrassed myself further. Margaret's composure flickered for just a moment. I don't recall that conversation. I do, word for word. Lena moved protectively closer to Sophie's bed. Just as I remember the private investigator you hired to follow me, and the adoption agency worker you bribed to make sure my daughter ended up with your son, your daughter. Margaret's voice rose. Sophie is a cross. She has been since the day she came to live with us. Sophie is my biological daughter, Elena said firmly. And she's also been Damien's beloved child for 6 years. Both things are true. Sophie had been listening to this exchange with growing confusion and distress. What are you talking about, Dr. Rodriguez? What does biological daughter mean? Elena's heart clenched. This was not how she had wanted Sophie to learn the truth. She knelt beside the bed, taking Sophie's small hand in hers. It means that a long time ago, before you lived with your daddy, I carried you in my tummy before you were born. But I was very young and couldn't take care of you properly, so I made sure you went to live with your daddy, who could give you a wonderful life. Sophie's eyes grew wide. You're my first mommy? The one who made me? Yes, sweetheart. But your daddy has been your real parent all this time. He's the one who taught you to ride your bike and read bedtime stories and taken care of you when you were sick. But where were you? Sophie asked, with the directness of childhood. I was learning how to be a doctor so I could help children like you, and now I'm here, and I gotta help fix your heart. Margaret had listened to this exchange with growing horror. This is ridiculous. Can't just waltz back into our lives and confuse this child with your fairy tales. They're not fairy tales, Mother. Damien's voice from the doorway was quiet but deadly. They're the truth. The truth you made sure I never knew. Margaret whirled to face her son. Everything I did was to protect you and this family. You destroyed this family, Damien said, stepping into the room. You robbed Sophie of her mother for 6 years. You robbed me of the woman I loved. You robbed Elena of watching her daughter grow up. I saved you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Margaret's carefully controlled facade finally cracked completely. That woman would have taken half of everything you own in a divorce. She would have used that child as a weapon against you for the rest of your life. Instead, you used our child as a weapon against both of us, Elena said quietly. And the only person who got hurt was Sophie, who grew up believing her mother didn't want her. Sophie had been listening to all of this with wide eyes. Suddenly she spoke up in a small voice. Is that why I always felt like something was missing? Like there was supposed to be someone else? The simple question broke Elena's heart. She sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, careful not to disturb any of the medical equipment. Maybe, sweetheart. Sometimes our hearts know things, even when our minds don't understand them yet. Healing begins. Margaret made one final attempt to maintain control. Damien, you can't seriously be considering allowing this woman to disrupt Sophie's life. She's been perfectly happy with our family. Our family was built on lies, Damien said firmly. Sophie deserves the truth, and she deserves the chance to know her mother if she wants to. Sophie asked, looking between all. The adults with the wisdom that serious illness sometimes brings to children. Of course you do, Elena said immediately. You don't have to have a relationship with me just because I'm your biological mother. Your daddy will always be your daddy, no matter what you decide about me. Sophie considered this seriously. Can I ask you some questions? Anything you want to know? Why did you give me away if you love me? Elena took a shaky breath. Sometimes when you love someone very much, you have to make hard choices to give them the best life possible. I was very young and had no money and no way to take care of a baby properly. Your daddy could give you a beautiful home, good schools, everything I couldn't provide. I thought that was the most loving thing I could do. Did it make you sad? Spilled down Elena's cheeks. It made me sadder than I've ever been in my life. Every day for 6 years, I wondered if you were happy and healthy and loved. Finding out that you were with your daddy, who loves you so much, is the best news I could have ever gotten. Are you going to stay now? Sophie asked hopefully. Elena looked at Damien, seeking guidance. He nodded encouragingly. If you want me to, I'd like to stay close by, so we can get to know each other. But slowly, so it's not scary or confusing. Margaret made one last desperate play. Faye, darling, wouldn't you rather have things stay the way they've always been? It's just you and Daddy and Grandmother? Sophie looked at her grandmother with surprising maturity. Grandma Margaret, I love you, but you were mean to my first mommy, and that makes me sad. I think I want to get to know her. The dismissal from a 6-year-old was more devastating than anything Damien could have said. Margaret gathered her purse and coat with wounded dignity. I see I'm not wanted here. But mark my words, Damien, this will end badly. It always does. With women like her. After Margaret left, the room felt lighter, as if a repressive presence had been lifted. Sophie reached out both hands, one to Damien, one to Elena. Can we be a different kind of family now? She asked. One where everybody tells the truth? New beginnings, 2 weeks later. Sophie was discharged from the hospital with a perfectly functioning heart and strict instructions for gradual return to normal activities. Elena had taken extended leave from the hospital to help with Sophie's recovery, moving into a furnished apartment. Just 10 minutes from Damien's penthouse. The adjustment period was delicate and sometimes difficult. Sophie had moments of confusion about where Elena fit in her life. Elena struggled with feeling like an outsider in her own daughter's world. Damien walked a careful line between supporting Elena's relationship with Sophie and maintaining his own parental authority. But there were magical moments too. Elena teaching Sophie traditional Spanish lullabies that seemed somehow familiar to the little girl. Sophie showing Elena years' worth of artwork and school projects, eager to fill in all the missing pieces. The three of them cooking dinner together, with Sophie as the delighted bridge between her two parents. One evening, Elena was reading Sophie a bedtime story in Spanish. Sophie interrupted to ask, "Are you and Daddy going to get married again?" "Again?" Elena asked, puzzled, like in the fairy tales. The prince and princess who get separated but find each other again and live happily ever after. Elena looked across the room at Damien, who was listening from the doorway. The love that had brought them together 7 years ago was still there. But now it was tempered with maturity, honesty, and the shared devotion to their daughter. "I don't know, sweetheart," Elena said honestly, "but I do know that we're all going to be a family now, whatever that looks like." "Good," Sophie said with satisfaction, snuggling into her pillow. "I like having a mommy and a daddy." The proposal 3. Months after Sophie's surgery, on a warm Saturday afternoon, the three of them were at Herman Park, feeding ducks, when Damien surprised both Elena and Sophie by dropping to one knee beside the pond. "Elena Rodriguez," he said, pulling out a simple but elegant ring. 7 years ago? I lost you because I was too proud and too foolish to trust in our love. I don't want to lose you again. Will you marry me? Will you help me give Sophie the family she's always deserved?" Alina looked down at him, this man who had broken her heart but had also given her the greatest gift of her life. She thought about the scared young woman she had been 7 years ago and the strong, confident woman she had become. She thought about Sophie, who was bouncing with excitement beside them. "Say yes, Mommy." Sophie called out, using the word that still made Elena's heart skip a beat every time she heard it. "Yes," Elena said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, we'll be a real family." As Damien slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her beside the duck pond while their daughter cheered, Lena realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that get a second chance. Sometimes hearts that have been broken can heal stronger than before. Sometimes the best families are the ones that are rebuilt with honesty, forgiveness, and the fierce determination to never let each other go again. Epilogue. 1 year later. Wedding took place in the hospital chapel where Alina worked, surrounded by close friends and colleagues who had watched their love story unfold. Sophie served as both flower girl and ring bearer. Wearing a dress that matched Elena's simple but elegant gown, Margaret Cross was notably absent. Having been effectively cut off from the family after her attempts to undermine Elena's relationship with Sophie continued even after the truth came out. It was a painful but necessary boundary that Damien had finally learned to enforce. Dr. Hayes performed the ceremony, joking that he had never before seen a surgeon marry her patient's father, but that love seemed to make anything possible as. They exchanged vows, promising to build their future on truth and trust. Sophie stood between them, holding both their hands. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Sophie cheered loudest of all. "Now we're really, really a family," she announced to the congregation, causing everyone to laugh and applaud. 6 months later, Alina was pregnant with their second child, a pregnancy they celebrated together from the very first moment, with no secrets, no lies, and no one to tear them apart. Sophie, now 7 and completely healthy, loved being a big sister in waiting. She would often put her ear to Elena's growing belly and announce what the baby was thinking or feeling. "The baby says thank you for fixing my heart so I could be here when it arrives," she told Alina one evening as they were getting ready for bed. Alina hugged her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and marveling at how perfectly Sophie had adapted to having both parents in her life. "And I say thank you for bringing us all back together," Elena whispered back as Damien joined them for their nightly family reading time. Settling onto Sophie's bed with his arms around both his girls, Alina reflected on the winding path that had brought them to this moment. The pain of their separation had been real and devastating, but it had also taught them both what truly mattered. They had lost 7 years, but they had gained wisdom, strength, and an unshakable commitment to their family. Sophie fell asleep between her parents that night. She often did, secure in the knowledge that both her mommy and daddy would be there when she woke up. And Alina and Damien, holding hands across their daughter's sleeping form, knew that their love story was just beginning. The millionaire had indeed thrown her out of his life once upon a time. But she had returned not just as the doctor who saved his child, but as the woman who completed his family and made his house a true home. And this time, nothing and no one would ever tear them apart again.